Hello, my dear friends. You're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 22nd of November of 2025. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And during the previous day, we received lots of very interesting updates from Ukrainian side about Trump's peace plan. So I would like to remind you once again that 2 days ago, Trump proposed a 28-point plan for peaceful settlement of the conflict. And furthermore, the United States of America issued an ultimatum to Zelensky to accept this plan by the 27th of November of 2025. If he doesn't accept the plan, then most likely the United States of America will stop supplying Ukraine with weapons and will stop sharing with intelligence information. And today we received lots of very interesting details. So let's discuss them in details. So according to information we have, the Ukrainian delegation will hold consultations on the peace plan with the United States and Europe in Switzerland. So delegation will be headed by Yermak, head of Zelensky's office. The main topic of the negotiations is the parameters of the future peace agreement, says Umerov. The Ukrainian delegation is also allowed to negotiate with the representatives of Russia. So few important things. First of all, Ukrainians are planning to probably postpone this situation and postpone the need and to accept this plan for as long as possible and for as far as possible. So this is the first thing. The second thing, Ukraine has already announced the configuration of their representatives. So, and if you take a look at this list, the head of this group will be Andrei Yermak. The second person is Rustam Umerov. So I would like to point your attention and to remind you that these two persons probably were most involved into corruption schemes of Ukraine since the beginning and during the special military operation. And the United States of America knows about this, and obviously the anti-corruption detectives also know about this. So imagine yourself that the representatives of the United States of America and Donald Trump will be forced to have a meeting with these corrupted persons, which obviously can make a lots of problems for these representatives, obviously. Another important thing is would like to discuss with you the question about areas of responsibilities. You know that every single state, every single country has lots of different probably offices, tax office, let's say parliaments, let's say ministers of defense and so on, and everybody is responsible for their own sphere. And according to information we have today and these days, the Parliament of Ukraine investigated and made additional probably investigations regarding the peace plan that was proposed by the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and the parliaments and the deputies of Верховная Rada came to conclusion that Zelensky doesn't have the rights and he doesn't have the power, constitutional power, to be involved into this question, into this issue, and to resolve these questions with other countries. So according to the Parliament of Ukraine, the Верховная Rada, is the only office that can probably talk about this, that can adopt laws about this, and so on. So that is why Zelensky, this is another way how Zelensky is trying to postpone the acceptance of these demands and ultimatum from the United States of America, and most likely he is going to do this during his visit to Switzerland. He will say that I cannot do anything with this because it is not my obligation. This is the obligation of the Parliament of Ukraine, so that is why you need to talk with them. But the deputies of the Верховная Rada are saying that most of the points are the powers of the Верховная Rada, not the president, and the parliament will not support them, says Deputy Nagornyak. According to him, the ruling faction, like the rest of the Rada, is not ready to make the concessions demanded by the United States of America. So as you can see, Zelensky is trying to make the situation when he will not be responsible for anything. He will say, it's not me, it's Rada. I'm trying to do everything I can with the purpose to settle the conflict. I agree and I'm ready to accept the 28-point plan of the President of the United States of America, but as you can see, I can't do anything think with the Verkhovna Rada, with the parliament, you need to work with them, and you need, first of all, to force them to accept this situation and to adopt additional laws that will allow me, Zelensky, to do at least some steps in this direction. So this is the situation, and as you can see, this is a very tricky situation. It's very interesting how exactly the United States of America are going to, let's say, handle with these problems. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation along the line of combat contact. And first, let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. Another day and another batch of changes we received from the Russian side and in the Russian favor. So let's talk first of all about the western Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly. So we received lots of videos how Russians were hunting and destroying Ukrainian vehicles that Ukrainians were trying to bring as close as possible to the siege of Stepnogorsk with the purpose to stabilize the situation. But pro-Ukrainian sources later added that Russians managed to improve their position significantly, that Russians captured the main roads and areas in this region, and that the Russians are about to finish the battle for the siege of Stepnogorsk itself. As for the central Zaporozhye direction, as for the Orekhov direction, I would like to remind you that during the previous 24 hours, several pro-Ukrainian sources published information that Russians launched another mechanized offensive operation in this direction. Ukrainians stated that they managed to repel those attacks, but as of now, as of the end of the 22nd of November of 2025, we still haven't received anything that can confirm both this Russian attack and this, let's say, Ukrainian counter-offensive operation or defense operation. Now let's talk about the eastern Zaporozhye direction. As you can see, the map has been adjusted significantly once again. The Russians, as you can see, managed to improve their positions around the city of Gulay-Pole and along R85 road. So let's start and let's discuss everything in details. And first, let's talk about the settlement of Novoye Zaporozhye. Today, pro-neutral mappers, pro-Russian sources, and the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation reported that as a result of clashes, the group of forces East managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Zaporozhye. So first I would like to remind you that Russians yesterday captured the settlement of Radosne. So for example, this is the situation by the end of the 20th of November of 2025. This is the 21st of November. The Russians captured the settlement of Radosne. This information was confirmed both by the video and by the report of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. I thought that Russians would take a small operational pause, but the Russians continued advancing, and by the end of the 22nd of November of 2025, the Russians also captured the settlement of Novoye Zaporozhye. And today, Russians also published this video where we can see how exactly the clashes for the settlement of Novoye Zaporozhye were taking place. But you know that there is a very important difference in this video and with the previous videos that were published from this direction by the pro-Russian sources. So first of all, usually when we see a video of this type, first we can see how Russians were bombing and attacking the settlement. Then we can see how Russians were clearing the settlement with any settlement with FPV drones, and in the final part of any of this video, we can see how Russians were raising their flags. But today the Russians published this video and they stated that the settlement of Novoye Zaporozhye was captured, but during this video we can't see even a single episode when a Russian soldier raised the Russian flag. So we believe that maybe the village was captured by the Russians by the 22nd of November of 2025, but Russians still don't have strong control over the territory, so that is why they decided not to risk with themselves and not to make videos with flags. But probably the headquarters were demanding, let's say, additional progress and additional video, so that is why the Russians made this video, but without real proofs. Anyway, we adjusted the map because we believe that even if the Russians still haven't managed to establish strong control over the territory, most likely they will do this in coming days or maybe even coming hours. Furthermore, according to different sources, the Russians improved their positions to the east and to the northeast of the settlement of Gulay-Polye. This information was provided today by neutral mappers and by pro-Ukrainian sources. So this is the map that was published today by pro-Ukrainian sources, you can see, and it seems that the Russians are about to capture the settlement of Chervone. At least the settlement of Chervone, according to the pro-Ukrainian sources, is already being colored probably partially as a Russian-controlled territory, and the rest is as a gray zone. So which means that in coming hours, and maybe tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, the Russians will confirm this information. So, and with the fall of the settlements of Zelenyy Gay and Chervone, the Russians will see and face no barriers to move further in the western direction towards the settlement of Gulay-Polye itself. According to the space of offensive operation, we believe that probably during the first decade of 2025, December of 2025, Russians will answer the eastern and the northeastern parts of the city of Gulay-Polye, and the battle for this area will begin. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Pokrovsk direction. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of interesting changes. So this is the situation by the end of the 22nd of November. This is the situation by the end of the 21st of November. According to different sources, the Russians improved their position significantly in the southern part, and the Russians captured every single stronghold between the city of Mirnograd and the settlement of Sukhoy Yar. So these are the changes between the dates and this direction. Furthermore, the Russians, according to different very reliable pro-Russian sources, managed to break through Ukrainian defense along the railways between the settlements of the Pokrovsk, Rovne and Mirnograd. And according to these changes, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to answer the city of Mirnograd from the west. The Russians answered the city of Mirnograd from the east and from the south a long time ago, and now, as we can see, the Russians answered the city of Mirnograd from the city of Pokrovsk, which means that the news around the city of Mirnograd is tightening, and currently the situation is complete disaster for the armed forces of Ukraine, who are currently located in the southern, central parts of the city. Most likely those Ukrainians who are still located, let's say, in the northwestern part of the city of Mirnograd, they still have chances for evacuation or for another breakthrough operation with significant losses, but those soldiers who are located to the south of the M30 road and the railways most likely will not be able to evacuate from the city in coming days. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Konstantinovka. The sources are saying that the Russians launched another major offensive operation along M32 road in the direction of the settlement of Stepanovka. So this is another offensive operation. The Russians before today were advancing and were attacking Ukrainians just from the south and from the southeast, and now several pro-Russian sources stated that the Russians began advancing also from the southwest. The main objective of the armed forces of the Russian Federation is to establish complete control over the settlement of Raskisne, Dovgaya Balka and Stepanovka, so to prepare a very strong foothold to the west and to the southwest of the city of Konstantinovka. So Russians are taking in pincers the city with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back from this area, and the Russians are trying to do the same picture, to create the same picture as we used to see in the area of the city of Pokrovsk. Now let's talk about the serious direction. As you can see, during the previous day, we have received a lots of icons exactly from this area, and most of the icons belong to FPV drone attacks, and most of these attacks were taking place along the main logistic lines. So what's happened here during the previous 24 hours? First of all, and the most important, is that Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to establish complete control over the settlement by the name of Zvanovka. So the picture, the configuration of the map that you can see right now in front of your screens took place by the end of the 20th of November of 2025. By the end of the 21st of November, we came to the conclusion that Russians captured the eastern part of the settlement and fields between the settlements of Kuzminovka and Vyimka. And today, both the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation and the different sources related to the situation confirmed that Russians managed to capture capture the settlement completely. The Minister of Defense stated that the units of the group of forces south, as a result of decisive actions, managed to establish complete control over the settlement of Zvanovka. Furthermore, the pro-Russian sources published this video where we can see how exactly the clashes for the settlement of Zvanovka were taking place. In this video, we can see a Russian soldier that raised the Russian flag in the most northern part of the settlement. So this flag was geolocated exactly at this point. So based on this video and based on the report of the Minister of Defense, we adjusted the map. So what is the configuration of the Siversk direction right now? The city of Siversk has just several supply lines that goes from the city of Siversk in the western direction towards the city by the name of Slaviansk. One of the roads goes through the settlements of Svyatopokrovska and then further in the western direction almost until the village of Alexandrovka. The second line goes from the city of Siversk in the direction of the settlement of Zakitne, then further in the southern direction towards the village of Krivo Luka, and then from the settlement of Krivo Luka in the direction of the city of Slaviansk. So as you can see, the biggest number of FPV drone attacks took place exactly along these supply lines. For example, in this video we can see how another vehicle of the armored forces of Ukraine were trying to get positions in the area of Yampol, but the vehicle was destroyed as a result of FPV drone attack from the Russian side. In this video we can see the same picture, but the Russians ambushed Ukrainian vehicles on the way towards the settlement of Yampol as well. So two vehicles most likely were destroyed, not just this one. In this video we can see several probably artillery positions or maybe vehicles of the armored forces of Ukraine. Vehicles, it's a truck with supply with munition that most likely was returning back to the city of Slaviansk for another batch of arms of supply, but Russians discovered this truck and destroyed this truck with a Lancet drone. As you can see, this attack also took place along the main supply line. Here we can see the same story, the settlement of Alexandrovka. Here we can see a vehicle of the armored forces of Ukraine that was abandoned and the vehicle was destroyed. So lots of updates are taking place exactly to the west of the city of Siversk, which means that currently Ukrainians have huge problems with supply, with logistic, and which means that in coming days, in coming 2-3 weeks, the city of Siversk would fall in Russians' hands without any resistance from the Ukrainian side. If Russians can capture the city of Siversk, then they will enter the operational space of the city of Slaviansk, and Russians will begin offensive operation in the western direction until they get the city of Slaviansk from the east. The situation is very difficult for Ukrainian side, and the city of Slaviansk and Kramatorsk, the Russians are trying to force Ukrainians to fall back from this area because, telling the truth, Russians, they don't want to fight for these cities. They don't want to reduce them to ruins because Russians understand that if Zelensky doesn't accept the proposal, most likely the cities of Slaviansk and Kramatorsk would be reduced to ruins as the city of Pokrovsk, as the city of Konstantinovka, Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar. The population would be forced to leave this area, and of course the Russians will have completely empty land without any chances to restore a normal life in this area. So that is why the Russians are interested in saving these two cities, in saving population on the territory of them. So that is why they want to negotiate. At least I understand the situation like this. But the thing is that if Zelensky rejected this proposal from the Russian side, then something tells me that nothing will be able to stop Russians to advance further deep inside of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk and the northeastern part of the Kharkiv region. As for the city of Kupiansk, the Russians continued the clearing operation. There are still lots of Ukrainians. The chief of the General Staff of the Armored Forces of the Russian Federation stated that there are 16 battalions there. The Russians continue their offensive operation in the Kharkiv region. So according to pro-Ukrainian sources, the Russians continue advancing using broad frontline attack, and the Russians are tasked to get as close as possible to the city of Kolodizne. As for the city of Volchansk, we expected that Russians would announce that they managed to secure the city completely, but nothing happened today, which means that today, tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow, the Russians will do this. Because according to the latest updates, the Russians secured up to 80% of the city of Volchansk. And that's it for today. Military with Summary channel reminds you to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.